Hello again, feral friends and fellow nature nerds, and thank you for tuning in to Dirt Dispatch number 35. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara. So on August 1st, we had some excitement here at Dispatches HQ in the form of a severe thunderstorm complete with a funnel cloud and large hail. And when I say large, I'm talking golf ball to baseball sized. I think I've mentioned before that despite the fact that this area is a semi-arid climate, less than 15 inches of rain per year, thunderstorms, even strong thunderstorms that produce hail, are fairly common on summer afternoons. And in fact, large hail, even up to golf ball sized, is a common enough phenomenon in these parts that when the warnings pop up, people scramble to protect their vehicles. So the hail we got on the 1st was big, even by Wyoming standards. Fortunately, storms like this tend to be fairly isolated, and while we were getting hammered, friends just half a mile away got almost no hail at all. So let's talk about how hail forms. Hailstones are formed when raindrops are carried upwards by updrafts in a thunderstorm into extremely cold areas of the atmosphere where they freeze. When they collide with other liquid raindrops that are being carried upward, those raindrops freeze onto the hailstone surface, and the hailstone grows. This process is called accretion and can be repeated multiple times as the hailstones cycle up and down in the storm cloud. Now, the hail falls when the thunderstorm's updrafts can no longer support the weight of the hailstone, which can happen either if the hailstone gets too big or the updraft weakens. So with a strong enough updraft, like, say, one that could produce a tornado, you can get some big hail. And, as you might expect, hail that size falling at terminal velocity packs a lot of kinetic energy and can do a lot of damage. Our neighborhood sustained broken windows in the houses, holes punched in vinyl fences and siding, and damage to cars, especially windshields and back windows, along with a lot of dents. But after things settled down and I was starting to clean up, I saw two things that got me thinking. The first was a large male pronghorn casually grazing next to my garage, as if it was just another normal day and the sky didn't just try to kill us all with balls of ice. The other was a group of 3 juvenile great horned owls, begging loudly like they usually do, and then tussling over a mouse that one of them had caught. And those two things got me wondering, how does wildlife survive a storm like that? If I had been caught out in that hail with no shelter, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say I would have been lucky to escape injured, let alone alive. So, of course, I did some research. And what I found out was sometimes animals also get injured or killed during large hail events. Now, a lot of animals can sense incoming storms. They're more sensitive to changes in barometric pressure, temperature, humidity, and the direction and speed of the wind. So when a storm threatens, they tend to seek shelter before it arrives. But that doesn't mean they're completely safe, especially if the storm is severe enough. Not too surprisingly, birds are most at risk and are more likely than larger mammals to be injured or killed by large hail. This is especially true for ground-dwelling grassland birds, which makes total sense. Trees provide at least some degree of shelter. Birds seek out cavities or nestle under branches, brush, or other shelter. Tucking up against the trunk of a tree can be good protection from the worst of the wind, the driving rain, or in this case, hail. The tree canopy also slows the velocity of the hail, and of course, the denser the canopy, the better. A dense forest canopy, or even a small stand of trees, is going to be safer than being out in the open. Although I will say that the trees here took a beating, and no big branches fell, but a whole lot of small branches and leaves were brought down. Now, like birds, deer tend to take shelter, finding stands of trees where they can hunker down and ride the storm out. One study determined that during a severe hailstorm in a heavily forested area, no deer were killed, but their investigation of other studies found that a substantial proportion of hail-induced deer mortality occurred in agricultural areas, wetlands, and grasslands, where there was limited or no canopy cover. But what about my pronghorn? Well, I couldn't find anything that specifically related to how pronghorn handle a severe hailstorm. My best guess is that they seek out shelter under trees or brush, and if they can't find that, well, I suppose they just have to hope for the best, and probably a few get injured or even killed. I think sometimes we assume that wildlife is, to a certain extent, immune from severe weather events because being exposed to the weather is just part of their everyday existence, but that's simply not the case. They do take shelter from extreme weather, but it can still take its toll. Okay, so other than frighteningly large hail, what else have I been observing here at Dispatches HQ recently? Well, I mentioned the juvenile great horned owls. They've actually been regular visitors lately, screeching their begging calls at dusk, and again, sometimes right outside my bedroom window at dawn. In fact, the last couple of days, at least one and sometimes two have been roosting on the lower branches of a tree near my garage. I posted a video on the Dispatches from the Forest social media accounts, so if you're interested, go check that out. It's always cool to see these amazing raptors up close, and I'm always amazed at how well camouflaged they are when they're sitting in those trees. The Eurasian collared doves that nested among the bird-deterring spikes high up on my front porch successfully fledged at least one chick and are currently working on another brood. Yeah, I know they're not a native species, but it's still interesting to see nature in action. I also spotted recently in a small wetland area nearby what I'm fairly certain was a great egret. Now, admittedly, I'm not 100% sure because I was driving by and I didn't have time to stop and get a really good look, but what I saw was an all-white wading bird slightly smaller than a great blue heron. I'll be keeping an eye out, and if I see it again, I'm going to try to get a more positive identification. They're a bit unusual for this area. What I read said they're widespread but uncommon in Wyoming, but we are within the egret's breeding range, so we'll have to see. I also saw my local coyote pair recently, which, for the record, ran off as soon as they caught a glimpse of me, and still haven't attacked despite the internet commenters insisting that coyotes will devour me. Any second now. They should be coming through the door just about... Okay, no, I guess not. Other animal sightings recently. Double-breasted cormorants, which are diving birds that I think I'm going to talk about on the next episode of the Dispatches from the Forest podcast. So tune in to learn more about those guys. And a big old snapping turtle. All good things. Well, that's all for now. If you want to support the podcast, here's some ways you can do that. Become a patron. Subscriptions start at just $5 a month. And with 3 paid months, you get some very nice Dispatches from the Forest merch. You can find all the details at patreon.com/dispatchesfromtheforest. Monthly subscription not your thing, but you still want to show your support? You can donate using PayPal and my email address, dispatchesfromtheforest@gmail.com. And that's also how you can contact me if you have any questions, comments, or requests for future episodes. You can donate using the Cash App and the hashtag ForestNerd. If you prefer to just send a check, email me and I'll let you know what my mailing address is. Check out the merch store at cafepress.com/shop/dispatchesfromtheforest. Click on products, find something you like. Finally, you can follow Dispatches from the Forest on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara, reminding you to go outside and get dirty. Dirt Dispatches is a production of Dispatches from the Forest and may not be used or rebroadcast whole or in part without express written permission.